Right, let us come to questions. Secretary of State for Health and Care, Ian Lavery.
Question number 1, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I join you in associating this side of the House with our condolences? I'm hugely grateful to NHS staff for the shift they've put in through what remains a challenging winter. It's because of them that waiting lists are going down, that ambulance handover times are 14 minutes quicker this winter than last, and that during periods of industrial action this winter, NHS providers kept approximately 95% of elective activity running. We've got to make sure that we invest not just in our service and in our staff, and we're working actively with health unions to achieve that goal.
Ian Lavery.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Minister join me in thanking the fantastic employees of Northumbria NHS Foundation Trust for the continued dedication and commitment from the top surgeon to the ancillary worker? You know, the NHS is held together by their efforts. However, it does come at a severe personal cost to many individuals. A recent YouGov poll showed that 73% of our heroes, the heroes of the NHS, reported suffering from burnout. That's severe exhaustion. Can the Minister tell the House what extra measures he's taken to ensure that those who will put their own well-being on the line to protect the health of the nation receive the support and the care they so richly deserve?
I'm hugely grateful to my honourable friend for his question, and he is rightly proud of his local trust. It's absolutely right that we cannot expect the NHS simply to rely on the goodwill of staff going above and beyond the call of duty to meet the needs of patients. That's why the government is committed to publishing a new workforce plan to create the workforce that's ready to deliver the transformed service set out in our 10-year health plan. We're already working with health unions, both on issues around pay, which people would expect, but also the conditions that people are working in, recognising, as my honourable friend rightly does, that this is not just about doctors, important though they are, it's about the entire NHS workforce who are delivering the improvements with this government that the country is so desperately crying out for.
Rebecca Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of the things that contributes to staff burnout is caring for patients in corridors. I recently visited St Helier Hospital and saw this for myself, and it was very concerning and distressing to see this. We're also seeing this in East Surrey Hospital in Redhill, in my constituency. Would the Secretary of State confirm when we can expect to see this resolved for good?
The honourable member is absolutely right to describe the appalling state of corridor care in this country. In fact, under our predecessors, not only was this allowed to emerge as an issue in the NHS, it was normalised, with even benign nomenclature like temporary escalation spaces being used to endorse this normalisation, which should never have been considered normal or acceptable. We'll be shortly setting out our plans for publishing data so that we can be held to account as well as the system. I am clear I want corridor care gone over the course of this Parliament, and I'm confident that when we publish all of the data surrounding this winter, it will have been better than last winter. But I also want to be honest with the House and the country, Mr. Speaker. Even on the best days of this winter, there are still patients being treated in corridors and in conditions that I do not believe are acceptable, and we should never allow to be normalised, which is why we're committed to year-on-year improvement.
Question number 2, Mr. Speaker.
So stay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Rural and coastal constituencies like South Dorset are at the heart of our shift in the 10-year plan from hospital to community. Not only does everyone deserve care closer to where they live and work, but people in rural and coastal areas often see the sharp end of health inequalities. After 15 years of damage, this government is determined to change the current postcode lottery of where you live determining the care you received. So, as announced in the budget, we're committed to delivering 250 neighbourhood health services across every part of England. There are also now 100 community diagnostic centres across the country offering out-of-hours services 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. Lots done, but lots more to do.
Lloyd Hatton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, I've been campaigning to restore the rheumatology clinic at Swanage Community Hospital and the chemotherapy clinic at Wareham Community Hospital. Both of these clinics were closed despite good health outcomes and high levels of patient satisfaction, and local NHS bosses agreed that they were successful clinics before they were mothballed. So with all this in mind, does the Secretary of State agree that we must deliver key services and clinics closer to where patients actually live? And will he take the opportunity to encourage local NHS bosses in Dorset to restore our much-needed chemotherapy and rheumatology clinics?
Thank
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I can well understand why my honourable friend is particularly concerned about the impact of changes on cancer patients. I know his ICB has heard his representations. They will have heard them again today, and I'm sure will be happy to meet with my honourable friend, as would my honourable friend, the Minister of State for Health. It is important people have services they need on their doorstep. And that's one of the reasons why we're devolving so much power and responsibility and decision-making closer to communities, so that services can be designed around the differing needs of communities in different parts of the country.
Well, Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Vital services like x-rays and scans have been removed from the Oak Park Clinic in my constituency without any prior warning or consultation from the ICB. Will the Secretary of State meet me to discuss how we can restore these services locally so my constituents don't have to travel to Portsmouth?
I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman, Mr. Speaker. He should absolutely make representations to his local ICB if he's got concerns about service reconfigurations. We are investing more in the NHS, and I recognise that there are nonetheless big challenges for ICBs to face into, and I'm sure they'd be happy to meet with the honourable member to hear his concerns.
Rosie Duffy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question 3, please.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Pathways trial has undergone a thorough independent review and has received all the regulatory and ethical approvals. The study sponsors, King's College London and the South London and Maudsley NHS Foundation Trust, are working to ensure that this is conducted in compliance with the relevant regulations.
Rosie Duffy.
Thank you. The United States Department of Health and Human Services peer-reviewed report found that harms from paediatric medical transition are significant, long-term and too often ignored and inadequately tracked, as testified by Keira Bell, who is here in Parliament today. What's the government's rationale behind medicalising yet more vulnerable children, given that we have no evidence of any benefit of this approach and, in fact, plenty of evidence of harm?
Yes.
Well, the government is acting, as the Honourable Lady knows, on the recommendations of the excellent report from Hilary Cass, which I think she would agree is world-leading evidence, moving the model away from medical intervention towards a more holistic approach to care. The government will continue to be guided by that evidence, as I think the whole House would appreciate. I know that she references Keira Bell. I know that my friend, the Honourable Member for Birmingham Edgbaston, asked the Secretary of State to meet with clinicians and others who disagree with the trial. That meeting is being arranged, and we will continue to work under the guidelines for clinical evidence.
Nadia Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to remind the House that puberty blockers are still prescribed to young people who are not trans, yet I don't see some of my colleagues who are so exercised when they're given to young trans people expressing the same concerns for their cisgender peers. Even Dr. Cass herself acknowledged that puberty blockers are effective for some young trans people and recommended against a blanket ban. While the trial is ongoing, could the Health Minister outline what steps the department is taking to increase funding and capacity for children and young people's gender services to address the unacceptably long waiting times which continue to cause enormous harm?
Well, I thank the my honourable friend for her question, and I do think we need to be very careful in line with Dr. Cass's report about our language here. We are talking about children here presenting with gender dysphoria and who are in gender distress, away from the medical intervention model towards a holistic approach to care based on the evidence. That is what the government is supporting. That has cross-party support more generally. I'm not entirely sure of the Liberal Democrats' position on supporting that through, but that is the model in which we are progressing. With the wider issues regard to support for children and young people, and particularly as they present across the board, of course this government is investing much more than anyone else has indicated they would do in support for all services.
Gregory Stafford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Part of the trial is to ask the child participants the ALSPAC Romantic Relationships questionnaire. Is she as concerned as I am that children under the age of 13 will be asked sexually explicit questions?
Yeah.
I think all members across the House are concerned about the distress at which young people are coming forward for all these services and need to support them and their families. Again, with all parts of this trial, it is important that it follows clear ethical and clinical guidelines.
Jonathan Pender.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government was right to bring in the indefinite ban on puberty blockers due to concerns about the gender services treatment that was being given over the last 15 years. During that time, 2,000 children who were questioning their gender identity have already been given puberty blockers. So could the Minister explain why we're not following up on those long-term outcomes before we administer these powerful drugs to 200 more children?
I thank my honourable friend for his question and his constructive work on behalf of young people in this area. I think there is a further question later. The government is looking at how we can link and use the data linkage study from that previous work, how we can best use it. As I think honourable members understand, that data was collected for different purposes. It's not of the quality that might be needed for this review, but we will continue to use all evidence that is available both in this country and in others in line with the best clinical practice under the guidance of what Dr Hilary Cass prescribed in her review.
Shadow Minister Dr Karin Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Secretary of State has previously said that he accepts all recommendations in the Cass review. One such recommendation is that the Secretary of State mandate the release of data for the data linkage study. Can the Minister tell us what specific steps have been taken to mandate the release of this data?
We absolutely stand by that work, so that we are working to make sure with NHS England that they are mandated to do exactly that.
Edward Morella.
Question number 4, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. This government is committed to ending the gaps in teeth by filling the gaps in local provision, including in rural areas like Dorset. We will work to introduce fundamental changes to the dental contract before the end of this Parliament. But already from April, the reforms to NHS dentistry that I announced last month will mean more NHS appointments and better oral health.
Edward Morella.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. NHS dentistry in West Dorset is in crisis. We have just 15 practices offering any kind of NHS care, and only half of young people have seen a dentist in the last 2 years. Residents are writing to me, elderly people removing their own teeth, children in A&E with preventable tooth decay. What consideration is the Minister given to requiring supervised trainee dentists on placement at dental training schools to work exclusively on NHS waiting lists rather than taking private appointments, which would help reduce the backlog?
Well, I thank him for that question. He will have noted that we have committed to tie-ins for future qualifying NHS dentists, dentists going through the training programme, I should say. That is absolutely right. It costs the taxpayer hundreds of thousands of pounds to train a dentist, and we believe it's absolutely right that a significant percentage of their time should be being put into NHS dentistry. What I would also say in terms of improving access is in the financial year 23-24, there was a shocking £392 million underspend on NHS dentistry at a time when demand was going through the roof. I made it clear that every penny allocated to NHS dentistry must be spent on NHS dentistry. I'm very pleased to report we've got that underspend down to just £36 million. The decrease in the underspend is leading to an increase in NHS dentistry, but I accept that there's still a long way to go.
Sharon Hodge.
Question number 5, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before I answer, may I also put on record my condolences to the family and friends of Colin Pickthall, the former member for West Lancashire. As the current member for that seat, it is my privilege to build on his legacy. We are committed to furthering investment to unlock new treatments and improve outcomes for brain cancer patients, including investing in cutting-edge equipment to improve access to samples for research. Individual pathology services in England maintain their own standard operating procedures, and these outline local capabilities and practices, but we are continuing to invest in England's pathology networks to deliver productivity and transformation improvements.
Sean Hodge.
Can I thank the Minister for her response and welcome the Government's focus on improving survival rates for cancer, particularly in the forthcoming National Cancer Plan. Will she agree to attend the campaign for Owen's Law here in Parliament on the 3rd of February to meet the families who've travelled from across the country to come and brief members of this House on the urgent importance of fixing the current tissue freezing postcode lottery?
I thank my honourable friend for her question. We are determined to ensure everyone who receives a brain tumour diagnosis, regardless of where they live, has access to the latest treatment options available. And I look forward to meeting Owen's wife, Ellie, later this month to hear more about their story and the next steps on this topic.
Paul Wall.
Question number 6, Mr Speaker.
Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. With permission, I'll take questions 6 and 9 together. As the House knows, I'm deeply concerned by the state of maternity care we inherited in the NHS. While a majority of births go well, I know from the courage of families who have spoken up and the concern of staff that there are devastating impacts arising from failures in care. That's why I asked Baroness Amos to chair an independent investigation into maternity and neonatal services to drive urgent action. But that's not stopped us from taking action. In the meantime, we've invested over £131 million to improve neonatal care facilities, brought in a new maternity care bundle, implemented a programme to reduce the 2 leading causes of avoidable brain injury during labour, and increase maternal mental health services. But there is so much more to do to guarantee safety now and into the future, and also to ensure truth, justice and accountability for past failures.
Paul Wall.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The new maternal care bundle, which the Secretary of State refers to, is rightly aimed at reversing the recent worrying rise in maternal death and ill health, particularly with an increase in obstetric hemorrhage, which concerns so many midwives, doctors and, of course, the families affected themselves. Given the Government wants to help women to make informed choices about how they give birth safely, can the NHS do more to highlight the well-documented risks of severe bleeding and placenta accreta that's caused by caesarean sections?
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for his question. Everyone accessing maternity care should be offered a personalised care and support plan informed by a personalised risk assessment. This is so women have more control over their own care based on what matters to them, their individual needs and preferences, and also to make sure that every woman understands the risk factors that might arise in her case. A caesarean section is generally a very safe procedure, but like any type of surgery, it does carry a risk of complications. All women should have the confidence of knowing that the doctors and midwives dealing with them are robustly trained to deal with severe complications, including hemorrhage. And that's why the maternity care bundle, as well as other measures, is leading towards greater safety, more information and, crucially, personalisation of care and patient choice for the mother.
Laura Coates.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I really welcome the new maternal care bundle and its ambition to drive consistently high standards of care for every pregnant and new mum. It's great that maternal mental health is prioritised as one of the 5 elements in there. And I'm grateful to the Secretary of State for his focus on this. The challenge now, of course, is to drive forward its implementation. So can the Secretary of State say more about how he intends to do this, and particularly how he'll ensure that NHS staff are trained and confident enough to be able to better screen and support women who are struggling with their mental health?
My honourable friend is absolutely right to raise this, and I commend her for the work she's doing in this area. There is real risk to women of postnatal depression, and certainly where there have been complications in birth, or worse still, injury, or the most unimaginable experience of loss. We need to make sure that women and their partners and the wider families are supported from day one. That doesn't just mean training and support for staff and making sure that they're doing emotional wellbeing screening. It also means thinking more thoughtfully about estates. And one of the things that's been really impacted upon by me, is the experience of women who've suffered loss during labour and during the care that follows, are asked to go back to the very maternity units where that unimaginable pain was first endured. So those are difficult issues to challenge. They will require investment, but these are the sorts of issues we're getting into as we think about more thoughtfully how to ensure that not just the physical health of the mother and baby is taken care of, but also thinking about the mental health and well-being of mother and the wider family.
Lillian Rand, Chair of the Select Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. An Oxford midwife recently told me how sewage regularly rises up through the floor and drips down through the ceiling on the maternity ward. This has become so common that it is now standard procedure for midwives to move the clinic whenever this happens, so patients are none the wiser. Now, obviously, if the hospital had the money to fix it, they would have already done so. But equally, obviously, they should be looking after mothers and babies, not shoveling sewage. So can the Secretary of State confirm that when the AMOS review does its work, there will be a flexible pot of money so specific issues in specific hospitals can be dealt with like this to improve patient safety and also to help staff retention?
Without preempting Baroness Amos' work, the Chair of the Health and Social Care Select Committee is absolutely right about making sure that we give staff the tools to do the job to the best of their ability and the right facilities and environment for them to be working in and for patients to be cared for in. It is completely unacceptable that on top of the other challenges that staff and families face during what is such an important moment, a unique moment of bringing new life into the world, that they're having to do so against that backdrop of crumbling estate she describes. We are putting the largest ever capital investment into the NHS. She makes a powerful point about the need for capital investment in this area, which was impressed upon me at Queen's Hospital in Romford on one of my recent visits, and I'll be looking at that issue very closely.
Vicky Slade.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recently visited the Dorset breastfeeding network at their centre at the Purbeck Community Centre. It was fascinating to hear the work that they're doing, but what they told me was that since COVID, standard antenatal classes for NHS, within the NHS, have stopped. They've never returned. And as a result, women are not getting the information they need to make informed choices, which is leading to decisions about how they give birth and whether they feed their babies. We know that the Pride in Place and the Best Start in Life centres are going forward, but they're not going to be covering most of my area, and they're only covering the deprived areas. How are we going to make sure there's a universal offer for antenatal care for everyone?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will be sure to make sure that my department, the NHS, looks into what's happened to provision in her area, and I'll write to her further about that. She's quite right about the need to make sure that parents are given high-quality information from conception to make sure that they're able to make informed decisions as they're thinking about everything from whether to breastfeed through to the steps that parents can take in those formative first 1,001 days to make sure we get the best possible outcomes. And on that, I will also take the opportunity to welcome the appointment of Will Quince to lead the 1,001 Days Foundation. We've previously crossed swords across this House, but I know how committed he is to this agenda, and I very much welcome his appointment.
Dr. Caroline Johnson, Shadow Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the maternity and neonatal plan is due in the spring, almost 2 years after he took office. The maternity review is delayed. There are no signs of the 1,000 additional midwives he said he'd train. Gynecology waiting lists are rising, with the number waiting for admission 6% higher than 1 year ago. The Secretary of State has an opportunity to save many lives, and I know he wants to make the use of all the opportunities available to him. Can I ask him to concentrate on making more improvements in maternity care?
Mr. Speaker, I would just point out that the 18 months that I have had the privilege of holding this post, we've invested over £131 million on 122 infrastructure projects across 49 NHS trusts to improve safety of neonatal care facilities. We've implemented a new programme to reduce the 2 leading causes of avoidable brain injury during labour. We've piloted Martha's Rule in maternity and neonatal units in 14 trusts across 6 regions to give patients and families the right to request a second opinion. We've launched a package of initiatives and interventions to reduce stillbirths, brain injury, neonatal death and preterm birth. We've held a culture and leadership programme. We've created targeted tools and schemes to promote midwife retention. We've increased maternal mental health services to help women. We've had to do all of this because we've had to do all of this, not wasting a single day in 18 months. Imagine how embarrassed we would be if we'd wasted 13 whole years.
Jonathan Brash.
Number 7, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As previously stated, we're boosting investment to unlock new treatments and improve outcomes for brain cancer patients, including investing in cutting-edge equipment to improve access to samples for research. Each pathology service in England maintains its own standard procedures for tissue freezing, which inform local capabilities and practices, and we're investing in England's pathology networks to deliver productivity and transformation improvements.
For Brash.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Minister for her answer and for her positive response to this issue at the recent Westminster Hall debate. As she will recall from that debate, my constituent Trevor Jones died in September last year from glioblastoma. His widow Samantha learned only later that there may have been life-extending treatment options available had his brain biopsy not been stored in paraffin blocks but instead flash frozen. Will the Minister recommit to examining how flash freezing can be made standard practice for brain biopsies across the NHS, and will she meet with me and Samantha to discuss a way forward on this?
I thank my honourable friend for his question. As he rightly points out, I was privileged to answer for the government in a Westminster Hall debate last week on this very issue, and remember vividly the story of Trevor. Last week I did commit to exploring current arrangements for tissue freezing options and the options for change, and I recommit to doing that today, and I'd be more than happy to meet with him and his constituent to discuss this further.
Question number 8, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Government will publish the 10-year workforce plan in the spring. This plan will ensure that the NHS has the right people in the right places with the right skills for patients when they need it. And we are engaging extensively with partners to ensure this plan delivers for staff and patients.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've been contacted by concerned doctors in Chester South and Eddisbury who, after 5 or 6 years at medical school and a further 2 years of foundation training, are now struggling to secure specialty posts and are being forced to consider leaving the NHS altogether. While I will reserve judgment on the medical training bill to be presented later today until I've seen it in full, I welcome the fact that the Government is finally treating this issue with the urgency it deserves. However, can the Minister set out how this legislation will be accompanied by a credible plan to expand training numbers so that the number of places is sufficient to meet the NHS's short, medium and long-term workforce needs?
Thank her for her almost support for the bill we hope to lay later to address much of this problem in order to yet again clear up the mess that we were left with by her party by changing to the rules, delivering a workforce plan in 2023 which essentially ramped up the supply of staff by extrapolating existing trends without any reference to constraints or the needs of the service. Our workforce plan will be different. We do hope for support for the bill later to remove some of that problem with regard to foundation and specialty training places, and we look forward to rigorous debate on that subject.
Jane Craft.
Speaker. My constituency, unfortunately, is not unique in seeing long waits for diagnosis of neurodiversity. 18 to 24 months is the expected waiting time in Thurrock, and some have to wait much longer. Given for a child, a wait of 18 to 24 months can sometimes be their whole lifespan or half their lifespan. Will the upcoming workforce plan make sure that there is a plan for paediatric care, particularly in allied health professionals such as occupational therapists, speech and language therapists and clinical physicians?
I thank my honourable friend for that question. And of course, the services that she outlines cover a number of different areas and in different locations. I think it's very important as we bring forward our workforce plan. It will reflect a different model of care. What we have seen is more services into secondary care, particularly into hospitals, at the expense of community and particularly primary care. That needs to change. That needs to change across the age spectrum so that the service that the new workforce plan will be designed in lockstep with new service design, more staff in neighbourhoods, more digital support and addressing the issues that she outlines.
Joe Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A study by the Health Foundation has found that the cost to the NHS of staff sickness and staff turnover is in the order of £12 billion a year. Will the government's new workforce plan include the issue of excessive cost through entirely avoidable turnover of staff?
Yes, because those issues are a result of the shocking morale that staff were left in as a result of his government's policies and the work that they did in opposition. As highlighted by Lord Darcy, staff morale and issues around staff sickness and the huge increase in agency spending we saw under their watch, those are all signs of a system that is not functioning for patients and it's not functioning for staff, and we absolutely will bring forward measures to address those issues.
Mr. Speaker, when the Secretary of State was in front of the Select Committee, he recognised that we aren't going to solve the workforce problems in the NHS without solving workforce problems in social care as well. There are 150,000 posts unfilled in social care, 3 times greater than in the wider economy. What are we going to do to help solve this problem?
Well, he and indeed the Secretary of State is right to address the fact that obviously the workforce, we need to look across the whole span and indeed people moving between those workforces. And as he will know, the Fair Pay Agreement with the increase in that £500 million to support that is part of our work to make sure that those issues are addressed across the piece.
Joe Platt.
Question number 10, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We know that many people with suspected ADHD experience severe delays in accessing assessments, and that's not right. We want people with ADHD to receive the right support in their communities. Our medium-term planning framework sets out expectations for local areas to improve access to ADHD services. The independent review into prevalence and support for mental health conditions, ADHD and autism will work with people with lived experience to identify challenges and solutions. The final report is due to be published in the summer and will build on the independent ADHD task force report, which we welcome.
Joe Platt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for her response. And can I declare my interest as the Chair of the ADHD APPG? And with that, providers for ADHD estimate that untreated ADHD could cost the economy £11.2 billion over the next decade, largely due to avoidable impacts on justice, employment, education and health. So will the Minister commit to ensuring that people with ADHD receive the support that they need to succeed? And will they work with the APPG to develop strategies that will help individuals reach their full potential?
I thank my honourable friend for her question. And through the medium-term planning framework, which we published in October 2025, we've set out those expectations, and we will continue to work with Trust to develop those to make sure that people with ADHD or suspected ADHD get the support that they need. And I'm more than happy to meet with the APPG to discuss these matters further.
Tim Karin.
Mr. Speaker, roughly 50% of the young people on the books of child and adolescent mental health services in South Cumbria have ADHD or autism, and the ICB provides no funding whatsoever to acknowledge that. And that is a huge burden on those young people and their families and stops them getting back into school and what have you. But it's also a burden on all those other young people waiting for treatment for things like eating disorders. Will she pay a personal attention to this? Obviously, it's her ICB as well, to make sure that children with autism and ADHD are properly supported through our CAMS services.
I thank him for his question. Obviously, as it is the ICB shared by my constituency, I am equally as concerned. This is something that will be explored as part of the review, and I'm more than happy to ask the Minister responsible to contact him further on how we can take that forward.
Dr Neil Hudson.
Question 11, please, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Rapid housing and population growth can put real pressure on GP services. That's why we're investing an extra £1.1 billion in general practice, taking total GP funding to £13.4 billion. We're also creating 250 neighbourhood health centres, upgrading surgeries through a £102 million fund, and working with MHCLG to determine how developer contributions from new housing through Section 106 and CIL can be improved to enable the delivery of local health services as an integral part of new housing developments.
Dr. Neil Hudson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. As my constituency neighbour, the Health Secretary will be aware that Chigwell Parish has no GP surgery of its own, requiring many of my constituents to travel to his constituency to access primary care. Given the government's top-down housing targets, what assurances can the Health Secretary provide that any new developments in Epping Forest will be accompanied by the delivery of adequate primary care infrastructure rather than placing further pressure on already overstretched services? And will the government support the long-standing call championed by me, local Conservative councillors and Chigwell Parish Council for the provision of a GP surgery within Chigwell Parish?
Well, I thank him for that. I'm not familiar with the details of that case, but I get the impression that my right honourable friend is familiar with those. I mean, we have, of course, this is a really important part of our manifesto commitment to end the 8 a.m. scramble, because that's all about access. That is precisely what we're doing. In September 2024, patient satisfaction with ease of access stood at just 61%. Today, it stands at 73%. That is huge progress. It's all about getting better access. Building a primary care estate that is fit for purpose is a very important part of that. I'd be happy to meet with the honourable gentleman to discuss the details of that specific case.
Dr. Luke Evans.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Community pharmacies are a vital part of that primary care infrastructure, including in Epping Forest. So using the NHS ODS data, can the Minister tell the House how many pharmacy contracts ceased in England last year?
I thank him for that question and congratulate him on the addition of the facial hair. He's glad to see he's joining that particular club. I think that's the only club that we may both be a member of. But look, we are aware of the pressure on pharmacy. It is a major challenge that we are facing, but we did give pharmacy a 19% uplift in the last spending review. Of all of the sectors in my portfolio, that was the one that received the largest uplift. We're also looking to secure better progress in terms of the use of technology, looking of course at the medicines margin, looking of course at the dispensing fee, recognising the significant financial pressures that pharmacies are under, but through reform and investment we believe that we can turn the corner and rebuild pharmacy in our country.
Dr. Luke Evans.
Mr Speaker, I appreciate his answer, but it is 650 contracts across England and Wales. He only has to look at the newspaper headlines yesterday to see that in his department, in his portfolio. And the chair of the IPA, Leila Hanbeck, has specifically warned that higher business rates and increases in national insurance contributions are to blame, both of which are set by the government, which drive up costs, while pharmacy income remains fixed, which again is set by the government. So does the Minister accept that these tax decisions taken by his government directly increase the costs and contribute to the loss of pharmacy contracts? And will he therefore raise it with the Chancellor immediately?
I thank you for that. I think there is actually some dispute over the number that was on the front page of the Express story, so we're looking into that number and we'll certainly come back to him on that number. On the broader point that he makes about the decisions that the Chancellor took at the last budget, I suppose the question back to him is, would he be cutting the £26 billion that this Labour government is investing in the NHS? And if not, how would you be paying for it?
I think the good thing is, just stick with the responsibility of being in government, don't worry about the opposition. Chris Vince.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Number 12.
Front bench. Who's 12? Secretary of State.
Sorry, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, this is a government that Regardless of the challenges we face, winter is facing into them. We've vaccinated over 17 million people this winter, 350,000 more compared to this time last year, and 60,000 more NHS staff. We're not out of the woods yet by any stretch, but just to give people a comparison for how our investment and modernisation is paying off, on New Year's Day, we had the busiest day in NHS history for 999 calls. Despite that, ambulances arrived to heart attack and stroke patients 15 minutes faster than this time last year. Backed by £450 million, our urgent emergency care plan will expand same-day and urgent care services. We're delivering new same-day emergency care and urgent treatment centres, more mental health crisis assessments and 500 new ambulances. Lots done, but so much more to do.
24-hour route shortly as well, Minister. Chris Vince.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the Secretary of State for his answer. Can I ask him to join me in thanking the extraordinary efforts of the staff at Princess Alexandra Hospital in Harlow for their work over the winter period? A few years ago, we saw the shocking statistic that people waiting in A&E in Princess Alexandra Hospital for 13 hours. Can the Secretary of State outline the changes that this government are making, bringing down waiting times, improving GP satisfaction levels and decreasing ambulance waiting times, and explain how this is ensuring that the Labour government ensuring the NHS is fit for the future?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I will absolutely join the honourable member in thanking NHS staff in Harlow and across the country for their incredible efforts during the toughest winter weeks. I want to particularly thank all of those staff who have supported their colleagues, worked throughout Christmas and New Year, sacrificing time with their families to care for ours. And of course, Mr Speaker, I'd particularly like to thank the staff at Chorley Hospital who facilitated our visit, and your representations from the Chair for longer A&E access has not been lost on me or indeed the record.
Look forward to the keys being handed in. Helen Maguire.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Last night, Surrey Heartlands ICB and 2 hospital trusts in Surrey declared a critical incident. This means that some hospitals can't guarantee that patients will be treated safely, and operations could be cancelled to make urgent care a priority. So can the Secretary of State confirm what action the Government is taking to support these trusts, and what funding will be made available to ensure these incidences don't reoccur?
Mr Speaker, to be clear, because there have been a number of critical incidents running across the country this week, far from meaning a critical incident does not mean that there is unsafe care or that we're unable to provide care. A critical incident means that there is a challenge and the system mobilises in response to help meet that challenge so that people do receive safe care. As I've said, Mr Speaker, we are investing more in our urgent and emergency care services. We're seeing that impact through year-on-year improvements to date. We're not out of winter yet. We've still got lots of hard yards ahead. I am confident that when we emerge from winter, we will be able to tell a story of year-on-year improvement. However, while the NHS is on the road to recovery, I wouldn't want anyone watching, not least the honourable members to constituents, to think that this government believes that what we've seen this winter is acceptable every day, in every case, everywhere. And until that's the case, we will continue to strive for further improvement day by day, week by week, month by month and year on year.
Dr Rosanna Allen-Carr.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Working my shifts in A&E over the Christmas and New Year, like many colleagues up and down the country, we experienced the undignified norm that has become corridor care. I welcome the Secretary of State's commitment to ending this, and as the chair of the all-party parliamentary group on emergency care, working very closely with the Royal College of Emergency Medicine, we are very keen that the government adopts our recommendations to ending corridor care. Previously, the Secretary of State has agreed to meet with us. Will he today reaffirm his commitment to meet with us to end this scourge in our A&Es?
My honourable friend can be absolutely assured of that. And can I also thank her for, as well as through her powerful advocacy in this place, putting her own words into action on the NHS front line. She doesn't need to. She could do the bare minimum to keep her licence going, but she always goes above and beyond to take care of patients and constituents, literally rolling up her sleeves and putting on her scrubs to do that. She's made a number of thoughtful recommendations in her report, and I look forward to engaging with her and her committee on that.
Mr Logan.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I genuinely welcome the fact that the Secretary of State is able to praise the efforts of NHS staff this Christmas and New Year. Genuinely mean that. But there's good news in Scotland too, Mr Speaker. Waiting lists have fallen for the longest waiters for the 6th month in a row. Threatened industrial action by resident doctors has been called off. But there is anxiety, Mr Speaker, not just in Scotland but across these islands, with the new UK-US medicines deal and its impact on the NHS. So can the Secretary of State change his habits this new year with a New Year's resolution? Answer my question. Where is the money coming from for the UK-US drugs deal?
It is about waiting lists, and I'm sorry. We've got to stick to it. Mr Logan, I was very good at bringing in, especially with health being devolved as well, so please, let's not change the question that's before us. Right, Helen Morgan will be a good example.
I always am, Mr Speaker. Thank you very much. Recently, I've heard from Candice, who was interrupted while changing her stoma bag behind a curtain on the emergency ward. Lynn, who waited 17 hours for an ambulance after breaking several ribs. And Sandra, who has bladder cancer and spent 31 hours on a plastic chair in the fit-to-sit area. Now, they all want to share their stories so others don't have to suffer like they did, in pain for hours and hours. So will the Secretary of State commit to ending these waits and back the Liberal Democrat call, welcomed by the Royal College of Emergency Medicine this morning, for a guarantee that no patient will have to wait for more than 12 hours in A&E?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr Speaker. We absolutely are striving towards meeting those standards which were met so successfully under the last Labour government, and where this Labour government has got to pull out every stop to repair the enormous damage that was done by our predecessors. And the Liberal Democrat spokesperson is absolutely right. Safety, of course, is paramount, but so is dignity. And when the Honourable Member describes those patients' stories in those terms, it really does underscore that behind those two words, corridor care, are countless stories of indignity and treatment in conditions that neither we, nor they as patients, nor staff want to see those people treated in, and we're determined to put an end to it.
Number 13, Mr Speaker.
Thank you. As my honourable friend knows, we inherited an NHS dentistry system in crisis, but this government is determined to fix it with fundamental reform of this vital service by the end of this Parliament. Since last April, we've delivered extra urgent dental appointments nationwide, and last month we announced new measures to get the right care to the right people at the right time, incentivising dentists to offer more NHS care.
The Minister for that answer. Latest NHS statistics do show that the government really has got the bit between its teeth, as 7,000 more children saw a dentist in 2024-25 than the previous year in the Humber and North Yorkshire ICB area. But adults has slipped from 43 to 41% over the same period. So how quickly does the Minister think that my adult Great Grimsby and Cleethorpes constituents will benefit from more appointments and more dentists?
I thank my honourable friend and congratulate her for that pun as well in her question. Look, it is good news. We are making progress on children's oral health. Absolutely accept that we've still got a way to go in terms of the broader picture. We are making 27,196 additional urgent appointments available in the Humber and North Yorkshire ICB area. Our reforms that I announced in December will kick in from April of this year. They are going to significantly increase the unit of dental activity fee rate that we pay for urgent care to incentivise more dentists to do urgent NHS dentistry. We've also got the Golden Hello system and a number of other measures that we're taking to address underserved areas. So a lot has been done, but there's still a long way to go.
Come to Topicals, Tom Collins.
Mr Speaker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Today we're bringing forward the Medical Training Prioritisation Bill. It implements our commitment in the 10-year plan for health to prioritise UK medical graduates and doctors with significant NHS experience for medical training posts. Taxpayers spend £4 billion training medics every year. It's time we protect that investment, ensure a sustainable workforce and give homegrown talent a path to become the next generation of NHS doctors. On which note, Mr Speaker, I wish to update the House that constructive talks with the BMA Resident Doctors Committee are ongoing. Let's see if we can collectively do better in 2026 than we did in 2025.
Tom Collins.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Patients in Worcester are struggling to access urgent care. Far too many are falling through gaps in our system with devastating consequences and huge amounts of double work. And patients feel they're having to travel too far for treatment. Will the Secretary of State meet with me to discuss the results of my deep dive into the failures in Worcestershire's NHS?
Can I thank my honourable friend for his question? He's absolutely right. We've got to shift care out of hospitals and closer to people's homes to make sure that we don't end up with the situation he describes. I'd be really happy. I know he's doing a lot of work on this in his own community. I'm very happy to meet with him to hear his findings and what we can learn and apply both locally for him and his community, but also elsewhere.
Secretary, Stuart Andrew.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. With 1 in 5 hospice beds no longer available because of increased costs such as NICs, it is hardly surprising that doctors are raising concerns about the increases in the number of end-of-life patients in our hospitals. It's therefore very concerning to hear that the palliative care MSF won't be available now until the autumn. So given this situation is increasingly urgent, will he commit to accelerating that timescale?
Well, Mr Speaker, we are moving at pace on the modern service framework, but this is also why, whether it was the continuation of the children's hospice grant and over multiple years so they could plan, or the capital investment we've put into hospices, the biggest funding uplift for hospices in a generation, we have recognised those financial pressures. I recognise that there is more to do, and I enjoy a close working relationship with the hospice movement to look at what more we as a government can do to support the vital work they do.
Sir Andrew.
Well, Mr Speaker, capital funding is welcome, but you can't pay doctors and nurses with bricks and mortar. Hospice UK have said that without additional support, it will mean more unnecessary hospital admissions, more unneeded A&E attendances, and more patients not getting the care they need. So I push again to accelerate the timescale, because obviously their lordships are considering the assisted dying bill, and they need to see that palliative care MSF before making such an important decision, and also make sure that we relieve hospices of this government's NIC hikes.
I understand the point the Shadow Health Secretary makes about capital funding, but I would also say that lots of hospices, through that capital funding, are able to free up their own resources that would have been previously committed to rebuilding works to spend on services. But I recognise that there is more to do. We are working closely with the hospice movement, and I hope he's reassured to learn that we will be reporting on the modern service framework initially in spring, so that we can then take on board feedback, reiterate, and then we will get to the autumn. But people won't have to wait until then to hear the direction of travel.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. My South Norfolk constituents welcome the government's commitment to 250 new neighbourhood health centres. For rural areas like mine, where healthcare can be miles away, this is a real turning point. Long Stratton is a growing town, yet distant from Norfolk's main health hubs. Will the Secretary of State meet with me to discuss how delivering a neighbourhood health centre for Long Stratton will dramatically improve health outcomes in South Norfolk?
I thank him, and we are committed to delivering 250 centres by 2035 with a progressive rollout over this Parliament. Early sites focused on areas of greatest need with consideration of factors including deprivation and access. Integrated care systems are in the process of planning the best holistic local configuration of a neighbourhood service. I would be very happy to meet with my honourable friend to discuss the potential for a neighbourhood health centre for Long Stratton.
Morgan, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. The social care crisis is piling pressure on hospitals where beds are taken up by patients who are fit enough to be discharged, and it's also piling pressure on local councils like Shropshire, where 80% of the budget goes on to social care. Yet the government's shifting funding from counties to cities and dragging its heels on the social care crisis. Will the Secretary of State take action by reinstating the cross-party talks on social care as a priority? Because we need to fix social care if we're going to fix councils, care and the NHS.
Well, Mr Speaker, cross-party working on social care has never been uninstated. And look, I know there's much more to do. We've been in for 18 months. We've put £4 billion investment in. We've legislated for the first ever fair pay agreements with £500 million committed to that. Significant additional investment in the disabled facilities grant. And, of course, making sure that in terms of building the workforce plan for the future, we have commissioned Baroness Casey to do her work. She's going to be reporting soon, and we look forward to taking that work forward.
I'm going to bad throat because of the Secretary of State. James Frick.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Following my recent meeting with Bury's Children and Adult Mental Health Service, has the Secretary of State considered the merits of separating neurodiversity services from core CAM's mental health provision? And will he meet with me and Bury's health leaders to discuss this approach, giving rising referrals in the system, long waiting times, workforce pressures and a growing risk of over-medicalisation?
Well, my honourable friend is right that NHS mental health, ADHD and autism services have never fully met the needs of the population in a tailored, personalised or timely way. The independent review into prevalence and support for mental health conditions, autism and ADHD will explore the current challenges facing clinical services. My honourable friend, the Minister for Mental Health, is currently overseas on departmental business, but I am sure that he'd be delighted to meet with my honourable friend on his return.
In room.
Over Christmas, I was contacted by constituents in North Devon who have been without NHS dental care for nearly 20 years. One with a tooth held together with super glue. When will the government reform the dental contract and properly tackle recruitment retention, especially in rural areas, so we stop the hemorrhaging dentists from the NHS longer term?
Yeah. I thank him for that question. We are in negotiation with the British Dental Association about the long-term contract reform that is so clearly needed, but I would also draw his attention to the announcement that I made in December around a range of interim reforms, particularly on urgent work, where we are significantly increasing the fee rate for urgent dental activity. That will kick in from April and I think will make a real difference in terms of access to urgent care.
Suzanne Joseph.
Mr Speaker, I would like to thank the Secretary of State for his letter following your concerns about corridor care in the William Harvey Hospital at the health orals in October. He noted the decisive steps taken to reduce the pressure, including employing more doctors, freeing up beds and accelerating hospital discharges. However, after 14 years of underinvestment, the corridor care has been normalised in part of the NHS. So what steps is the government taking to ensure it meets its commitment and we see an end to corridor care in William Harvey Hospital?
To my honourable friend for his advocacy on this. I know it has been taken very seriously by NHS leaders nationally as well as locally, who listen very carefully to what he says on behalf of his constituents. I've reported to the House this morning, Mr Speaker, on all of the action we're taking to drive improvement. We are seeing improvement, but there is so much more to do, and we are determined to consign corridor care to the history books, not just in Ashford, but right across the country.
Adam Dance.
Access to mental health services in rural communities is a challenge when services are stretched and underfunded. So what steps is the Secretary of State taking to improve access to mental health services in Yeovil?
Yeah. I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman for his question. The government increased investment in mental health by an extra £688 million in 2025, with all systems forecast to deliver the mental health investment standard. And as our medium-term plan makes clear, we need a newer mental approach to mental health to drive down waits, improve the quality of care. But our expectation is that ICBs will be required to meet mental health, protect mental health spending in real terms, rising in line with inflation year on year, making sure we meet the needs of constituents in all parts of the country.
Butley.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And will the Secretary of State join me in thanking staff at the Royal Shrewsbury Hospital for their commitment and patience over the last 2 years, as we've seen our trust move from being the worst hospital in the country to the most improved. And thanks in no large part to the investment in a hospital transformation programme, we've just opened 2 new wards, and he could say it in person when he joins me on a visit, if he would be so kind.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sure on my rounds I'll be able to swing through. And look, it's so important, especially against the backdrop of crisis that the NHS has been through over many years, that as well as celebrating the best performance, we also celebrate when there is real improvement. And she knows as well as I do, there is of course more to do, but it is to the credit of leaders and staff that there has been improvement, lots done, a lot more to do.
Jess Brown-Fuller.
Speaker, last summer Sussex ICB cut their IVF provision from 3 cycles to 1 due to budget pressures. There is currently a postcode lottery for IVF, and going through fertility treatment can be really harrowing for those families. So given that additional cycles improve success rates, will the Secretary of State commit to a nationally consistent standard for IVF?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is an issue that, as a government, we're looking at. As with all treatments, we should be following NICE guidelines, but I recognise that in this area there is a degree of regional variation in provision in a way that, frankly, I find difficult to justify. We are looking at this as a government, and of course, as we make decisions, we'll report on progress to the House.
Jonathan Blash.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Currently, there is not a single NHS dentist in Hartlepool taking on new patients, and many of my constituents are desperate. We have made real progress on urgent care, including a new urgent dental access centre, but it's not enough. Can the Minister say what more will be done to fix NHS dentistry in Hartlepool and across the country?
I thank him, and he's right that whilst we are making progress on urgent treatment with the urgent dental access centre that he mentioned, there is a real challenge around new routine care in Hartlepool. We're looking to improve this unacceptable situation that we inherited by offering dentists £20,000 to work in underserved areas and making it a requirement for new dentists to practice in the NHS. But he's right to point to this. It's not an acceptable position and we have to improve it.
Mr. Speaker, the government's interim dental measures will of course be welcomed by residents in North Dorset, but they know, as I do, that we've been discussing the inadequacy of the dental contract in this place for years. What they can't understand, and what I can't understand, is why it will take to the end of this Parliament to actually sort out that big problem, as the Minister told us just a little while ago, at the end of this Parliament, and not sooner, in order to turbocharge NHS dentistry in rural North Dorset.
I thank him for that question. I have a huge amount of respect for the honourable gentleman, but I have to say I'm a little bit taken aback to be told about the lack of progress when they had 14 years on those benches to sort out NHS dentistry. But nevertheless, we are engaging intensively with the BDA. We've got the interim reforms which kick in from April, which I think will make a big difference, as I've said. But we're certainly looking to then put the long-term reforms in place from 2027 onwards. So we want this situation to be rectified by the end of this Parliament, not to have a new contract by the end of this Parliament.
Mr. Speaker, until COVID, Holland Ward had a local NHS clinic serving the community. However, it was closed first temporarily and then permanently, leaving many vulnerable and elderly residents without health care, and it's put immense pressure on services in Brailsford. Will the Minister look at reopening this health centre, and what steps the Department is taking to ensure that more people in Holland Ward can access health care closer to where they live?
I thank him for his question. The commissioning of the service, I know it's of great concern to him and his constituents. It is a matter for his local ICB, and I do commend him to keep talking with them about the best provision for his constituents.
Caroline Dandridge.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I was fascinated by the Minister's answer about the closure of pharmacies earlier, because the fantastic news is that in my constituency in Leon Solent, there's a new pharmacy that wants to open. Local people are desperate for a second pharmacy in Leon Solent, and the local GP practice supports it as well. The problem is that the ICB have turned it down. Hampshire ICB have rejected it. Does the Minister share my disappointment that local people aren't going to be served in the correct way through their pharmacy provision, and would he please meet me to discuss this?
I thank her for that question. That it does sound somewhat baffling that there's demand for that service. Pharmacies play an absolutely vital part in our community, and I'd be happy to meet with the Honourable Lady to discuss the details of that further.
Mafude.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. A number of local residents have been in touch recently following an announcement of a Cramlington dentist which would no longer be offering NHS services, moving to private prescription only. It's led to a number of people being unable to access services locally. What more can the government do to ensure that my constituents have access to appropriate local services?
I thank her for that question. Could I just check? It was dentistry that it was a dentistry service. I didn't quite catch the wording. Yes, absolutely. I mean, she's absolutely right to point to this issue. As I've said, I do think that the reforms that we announced in December will make a major difference because dentists haven't been incentivised to do NHS dentistry. That means significantly increasing the UDA, as we are doing. But there's a range of other measures that we do need to take, and I'd be happy to meet with her to discuss the specific details of that case that she mentioned.
Shocker Adam.
Failed PFI schemes from the noughties for 3 Leicester hospitals saw the NHS being sued for almost £30 million despite no work being carried out. Leicester hospitals are still without any new buildings. So can I ask the Minister that expensive, inefficient financial packages, £60 billion of private money costing £306 billion of taxpayers' money, will not be utilised for future projects?
Mr Speaker, this is a government that's putting record levels of capital investment into the NHS to correct more than 14 years of Conservative failure. We are using public investment. We're certainly learning the lessons of the past in relation to PFI. We are only able to do this, Mr Speaker, because people voted Labour and elected a Labour government. And I look forward to working with the city's Labour MPs to deliver the improvement in services they deserve.
Rachel Baskell.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To date, Baroness Casey's review into adult social care has been pretty impenetrable, and yet in York we want to engage and innovate. So can my honourable friend provide Parliament with a briefing of the progress, scoping and scheduling of the review as the clock is ticking and the crisis is growing?
I thank my honourable friend, and we have discussed this issue. I hope the issue she's had in terms of access to the Commission has now been resolved. I know that they have made contact with her. The Commission is, of course, an independent body, but I am in no doubt at all that parliamentarians will hold the Commission to account through the mechanisms that are at its disposal, for example, the Select Committee. But of course, we're not sitting on our hands. We are delivering the Fair Pay Agreement. We've delivered the biggest uplift to unpaid carers since 1976, and a range of other measures to get our adult social care system fixed and
Thank you, Mr Speaker. We've just been notified that the William Blake House in my constituency, which is a residential home for people with severe learning disabilities, has been issued with a winding up notice, and the court hearing is actually tomorrow. Now, given that the families had no notice of any of this and have had no consultation, they're naturally worried about what provisions will be in place for their loved ones. So will the Minister urgently meet with me and discuss looking in place about putting a contingency plan in place for them?
I thank her for that question. I'm, of course, not familiar with the details. Could I perhaps ask her to write to me with the clear details, and I'm sure that then we can ensure that officials take this up as a matter of urgency.
Matt Bishop.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Parents supported by a small charity, Harry's Pals, consistently describe a fragmented and emotionally exhausting system when accessing support for parents of children with life-limiting conditions. So will the Secretary of State commit to exploring a dedicated national support pathway for parent carers, including better access to counselling and respite? And will he meet with me and Hayley Charlesworth, the founder of Harry's Pals, who's watching at home today with Harry, to discuss how we can better support these families, both nationally and in the Forest of Dean?
I thank my honourable friend for his question. Local authorities must assess disabled children's social care needs and provide respite care, including funding short breaks where appropriate. We are currently developing an all-age palliative care and end-of-life care modern service framework, and will consider the issue of emotional and practical support, including for parents or carers, as part of that work. The Minister for Care, my honourable friend, also chairs a cross-government meeting with DWP, DBT and DFE ministers to consider how we can provide carers with better recognition support, and I'd be happy to meet with my honourable friend and the founder of Harry's Pals.
Smart.
Much, Mr Speaker. My local mental health trust is commissioned to deliver just 100 autism and 80 ADHD assessments a year. The team is led by my constituent Claire from Marple, but they have approximately 1,600 people on their waiting list for ADHD alone. That's a 12-year waiting list. This is driving my constituents to seek a private diagnosis, but then their GP is refusing to sign up to a shared care arrangement as the numbers just don't add up. What plans does the government have to review the shared care protocols so that they work for patients and GPs?
I'm grateful to the honourable member for her question, because while, of course, we're looking at issues around prevalence and what's driving apparent increases in conditions like autism and ADHD, what we are really driving at is making sure that we meet the needs of everyone. And I do not want to see a future for this country where those who can afford it pay to go private and those who can't are left behind. Nor do I want to see a situation where people who have a diagnosis do not receive the care they need. And we are looking at these issues with urgency.
Mr Gilbert.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I and a number of colleagues have concerns with the up-and-coming Pathways trial. The Secretary of State has powers to use these existing medical records for research purposes. Can my right honourable friend therefore consider using these powers to increase evidence base and to prevent proceeding with the Pathways trial?
I thank my honourable friend and for her constructive approach to this very difficult issue. She is right to make challenges. We must have open and transparent debate. And to be very clear on this part of my last answer, the Secretary of State will use his power that we will have a retrospective data linkage study to identify the associations in former patients' experiences and outcomes through the analysis of available digital information within health records and other nationally held databases. This will not establish causation, but it is an important contribution to the evidence base.
And the best objective.
Mr Speaker, I'm not ashamed to say that I've had a finger up my bum. Not like that, but in all seriousness, as a black man in the target age range with a family history, I'm a keen advocate for prostate cancer screening. One of my residents has been told by his GP surgery, as there is no national screening programme for opportunistic testing, we have followed the national guidance and patients cannot request one without GP authorisation. So what advice could the Secretary of State give my residents who are struggling to get screening for prostate cancer? And could I also say a big thank you to the team at Kingston Hospital for their swift action in moving my dad from active surveillance to treatment. He raves about them.
Can I certainly join him in endorsing his final message and also to commend him for his declaration. Because the more we can break taboo and stigma around these issues and get us talking more openly about the telltale signs of risk, the better protected we will all be. As he will know, we're looking very carefully at the recommendations around screening. I will be convening a group of experts with the Chief Medical Officer to probe some of the recommendations, and I'll keep the House informed.
Alex McIntyre.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Last Friday, I went on a visit to my fantastic local GP service, Havant Health, and they are already using technology and AI to make sure patients get the right care they need. But they did tell me that there's currently no technological solution which allows patients to both be triaged and directed to their hard-working family doctor when booking online. So what steps is the department taking to support the rollout of technology in GP surgeries like Hadwin Health in Gloucester?
Thank him very much for that question. I was a little bit surprised. I think that technology does actually exist. I've visited a couple of GP practices where the online booking system gives the patient the option to specify the doctor that she or he would like to see. I'd be very happy to connect my honourable friend with relevant officials in the department so that they can perhaps connect with the GP surgery to resolve that issue.
Andrew Llewellyn.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In NHS provider data published just before Christmas, we learnt that in East and North Hertfordshire Trust, the number of people waiting for treatment has fallen more than by any other trust in the country. This is absolutely fantastic news for my community. Would my right honourable friend agree with me and commend all of the staff involved in this success and say that this is precisely what people voted for when they voted for change on the NHS?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Of course I endorse what my honourable friend has said. Waiting lists are falling for the first time in 15 years. Lots done, so much more to do, but with Labour, the NHS is on the road to recovery.
Zoe Franklin.
Mr Speaker, in Belfields and Slifield Ward in my constituency, the local GP surgery is squeezed into a unit as part of a parade of shops, clearly no longer the size needed for the growing community. The team do a great job in spite of the challenges. Will the Minister set out the steps the department has taken to support community health hubs in areas just like this ward, in order to bring GP and wider services together locally and improve facilities and access for my residents?
Well, I thank you for that question. We, of course, do have the £102 million primary care estate fund, which can help with refurbishments and improving the functionality of primary care and particularly GP surgeries. If she would like to write to me about the specifics of that case, I'm sure that we can ensure that the relevant officials give her the answer that she needs.
James Wilde.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Health Secretary said that he's shocked at the inability to acknowledge and then remedy state failures, and it's now 2 years since the Hughes report, but no time frame has been set for compensation for the Valparate scandal. When will my constituents, Colleen and Andy, get the redress that they need so they can make long-term provision for their son?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. He's quite right to hold the government's feet to the fire on this issue. We are having cross-government discussions about this issue and other groups of victims of state failure. We'll keep him and the House updated.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A constituent of mine who attends Dudley Voices for Choice and has autism with complex mental health needs and is at risk of self-harm can't use the telephone, but is still required by mental health services to do so. They're not being able to be treated. They're being told that they're non-compliant and their support was therefore reduced. What steps has my right honourable friend taken to ensure mental health services offer alternative ways to communicate to those that can't use the telephone? And I'd like to thank Sarah Offley and the team for Voices for Choice.
I thank you for that question. We are recruiting 8,500 more mental health workers by the end of this Parliament, and also the Mental Health Act reforms will ensure people with a learning disability, autistic people, as well as people with the most severe mental health conditions, have greater choice and control over their treatment and receive the dignity and the respect that they deserve.
Final question, Blake Stevenson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Constituents of mine have been reporting that they've been directed to hospital for regular blood tests rather than having them at their GP surgery. Would the Secretary of State please outline how he'll ensure blood tests are taken in a community setting? Surely that must be much better value for the taxpayer and much more convenient for patients.
He's absolutely right, and that's why a big part of our modernisation approach is to shift care out of hospital into the community, making greater use of community diagnostic centres, community pharmacies and GPs. But as the honourable gentleman's question shows, 18 months in, lots done, but a lot more still to do.
Right, we'll let the front bench change over.